So this is the fourth case that we're going to work on, and this would kind of involve a few concepts that we have already worked on, and we'll extend one of the earlier discussions we had in terms of creating a dashboard as well. Now let's understand the problem statement. It says details of the financials of a company's various subsidiaries are given. Subsidiaries are different businesses or different companies that are created under one company. So for example, Reliance would have multiple subsidiaries in retail, oil and gas, petrochemical, and telecom. Similarly, a Tata Group would have subsidiaries in various businesses. That's what is given here in terms of subsidiaries of a particular company in four segments. These business segments are food and beverages, media, and it's in infrastructure and cement. So these are the four subsidiaries or business segments which are given. We have datas or parameters given on sales, operating profits, net profit, marketing expenses, and market share in segment for each of these segments given to us for 6 years, 2010 onwards till 2015. Right, all the data in terms of sales and expenses, profits, etc., is in rupees crore, whereas market share is in percentage terms. The subsidiaries operate in different business segments, and you're supposed to represent the data in the best possible manner so as to derive meaningful information out of this. So let's say the problem statement is that the CEO of the company wants to pick up a particular sector, a particular subsidiary, and pick up a particular parameter and be able to draw a chart for 3 years for that parameter, right? So the problem statement says you need to be able to pick up a sector or a subsidiary. Within that, you need to be able to pick up a parameter, and then you should be able to kind of create a chart for 3 years of data on whatever year you choose, right? So you have to choose a sector, a parameter, and a year, right? Now, if you note, we have done something similar earlier where a dynamic chart was getting created, where we were choosing a state, and the state being chosen was displaying the sales for that state, right? And we were looking up for the state in a table, and the sales were getting picked up and getting displayed. The problem here is that we are still looking up for the data. So there is a lookup happening, but the lookup is going to happen on two data points. That's a problem because we look up, for example, which we had used, will look up only one lookup value, right? So that's going to be a problem for us. We will try and see how do we go about solving this problem as we go along doing this case. There are possibly multiple solutions that are available to this, right? Let's first start with creating a sort of a dashboard where the CEO can choose what sector, can choose what parameter, and can choose what year he or she wants the data for, right? So we'll go to the dashboard sheet here, and we'll try and kind of put in the data from what we already have, right? So first let's put up all the subsidiary names. So I will select all these. I'll press Control and select all these four, keeping Control pressed. Press Control C and paste it here. So that gives me these four. Now I'm not interested in these four subsidiary 1, subsidiary 2. I'm only interested in the names that are there. So what do? We select all this data. We go to data. We click on text to columns. Text to columns. Now you could either use fixed width or you could use delimited. Let's use delimited. If we use delimited, then we go to next. What is the parameter which is dividing the numbers? That's a hyphen. If you see, that's this dash that is dividing the number. So I put that in the tab under. I check other and put it there, and I click on next and I click on finish, and we find that the data has now been separated. Now I don't want this subsidiary 1, etc. So I can select all this, delete, shift cells left. So we do that. So foods and beverages, media, infrastructure, and cement is available with us. There is a small issue. When we divided, there is a space bar that was available. So there is one space which is available here at the beginning of the term. It doesn't start directly with F. It starts with a space because there was a space after hyphen. So I can either remove it by removing it manually from each of these, right? Or I could do what is called as I can select all these and I can do a find and replace. So I can do a control H. What are we finding? We are finding a space bar. So just add a space. And what are we replacing it with? We are replacing it with nothing. So just click on replace all. You see all done. We made 6 replacements. Click on OK. Click on close. So the first 4 spaces have gone, but there are 6 replacements. So you see there is a challenge that has happened here. What has also happened is there was a space between foods and beverages, and that also got taken out. So we don't want that to happen. And for ensuring that that does not happen, we will probably be using something else. We can either do it manually or we can use a function called trim. So what does trim do? Trim basically removes spaces from the beginning or end of a string, right? So when I do a trim calculation here, then it removes the spaces from the front. So if you have a lot of parameters, then using trim might be helpful. But if you don't have a lot of parameters, we can actually go and do this manually. We don't necessarily need to apply a formula. We can use find and replace as well, as long as there are only one word strings that we are looking at. If there are other spaces that are available in between, that would create a problem, right? So that's foods and beverages that we have. Let's go to the parameters. We select all these parameters, put up all these parameters on this column, and then let's look at the years. Remember, the problem statement says that when the CEO picks a year, he or she should be able to plot a curve and look at the data for 3 consecutive years after that year, which means if you select 2010, you should get data for 10, 11, 12. If you select 2011, you should get 11, 12, 13. If you select 12, you get 12, 13, 14. Select 13, 13, 14, 15. You can't select 2014 onwards because you don't have 3 years of data. So the choice to select the years will only come from 2010 to 2013. Now we have the data available to us in the form of a row, and we want to put it here in the form of a column, right? So what do? We select the data, Control C, go to the dashboard, right click, paste special, and under paste special we select transpose, right? And click on OK. Transpose gives us this data. We remove the bold selection that was there, and that brings us to the parameters that are to be selected, right? Now what do? We put in a term called select subsidiary. We put in select parameter, and we put in select year, right? Once we put in these numbers, the next idea is to put in a drop down menu, just like we've done earlier. So how do you put in a drop down menu? You go to data validation, click on data validation, select list, source is here, right? And click on OK, and you get the list here, which can come in and put the data here. Similarly, for the second one, select parameter, data validation, list, source is sales to market share and segment. Click on OK, and you get the data there. Third one is select year. Once again, data validation, list, source of data is available here. Click on OK, and we get the data for 2010, 11, 12, 13. So now what we'll also do is we'll just highlight this so that someone who's choosing this knows where the selection is happening from. So these are the highlighted cells where you are going to make the selection, and you can select anything. You can select anything here, and you can select anything here. And we want a chart to be displayed for this. right? Since we have already done this and we don't need this data, we can hide all these rows so that it looks cleaner in the entire context. And the next thing we are going to do is we need to put in that data in the form of a table. So we are saying year, we are saying parameter, and what is the year? The first year is the year that is selected, the second year is the next year, and the third year is the next year. So we keep adding 1 to all of these. So we select the first year as selected from this drop down. We add 1 to this, so that's equal to A15 plus 1 and equal to A16 plus 1, right? We use this and we go and centrally align this data. Now, if I change the year to 2010, it gives me 10, 11, 12. If I change the year to 2012, it gives me 12, 13, 14. We need to be able to pull out the data and put that data here. At this point of time, that exists as a problem for us. We don't have that data because we'll have to do a lookup on two values, which is both cement and operating profits in what is selected at this point of time, or a sector and a parameter whenever we are doing that. And that is going to create a little bit of a complication for us. In our next section, we'll try and see how do we resolve this problem.